You're sort of disproving the psych sheet, I suppose, really, in essence, aren't you?
This is over 300 solves, 76 averages. That's certainly, I would say, a fairly good sample size. A lot of people thought he was averaging around 10. And
you're kind of finding the mathematical nerve ratio almost, kind of.
Yeah,
in a way. Let's shift gear into these stats. Hey, you've taken a deep dive into is it Luke's stats in particular?
Yeah. So these are all Luke's stats, and this is the main reason why I'll say probably only a couple people thought Luke was going to get world record, and why I think a majority of people would have never seen this coming.
Okay, talk us through it. Where do we want to start here?
Okay, so if you could, okay, the page setup's a bit it's okay, but
I can zoom in.
Well, like it's just like my bottom diagram in there. It's not really visible, but it's okay. Yeah, that's probably better.
Okay, cool.
So, first off, I'll talk about what I did. So these are Luke's stats from all 76 OH rounds that he had from the start of 2025 up until his world record, I believe, or up until this comp when he got his results input. So probably like 2 or 3 rounds. So probably around 78 now, but this is the 76 from the beginning of 2024 to whenever he got the 772.
Okay.
So obviously, okay, so the notation is a bit messy, so I'm not expecting people to understand what this means. But if we could go back to the first slide, sorry.
This is slide 1.
So yeah, slide 1. Yeah. So X, if you see the X with the bar on top, which is the first part, we notate that as X bar, and you'll see that says 10.0096.
Uh-huh.
That is the overall mean of his averages. So first off, like a couple disclaimers, it's very hard to do cubing statistics because we use average of 5, and then you obviously take out the best and the worst time, and then there's all that jazz. But the mean of his means, or sorry, the mean of all of his averages from this time was around 10.01. So that's what people probably would have assumed that he's averaging. So then this is where I brought in a 1 proportion z-test. So if anybody is a statistics student or they've taken a statistics class before, they'll know what this is. Essentially what this is it's comparing a claim. So the claim would be that he truly averages 10.01.
Yeah.
And then because he got a 772 average, we're trying to see if like he truly averages 10.01. So the claim would be that he likely averages less than 10.01, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's kind of it would be kind of rare to have someone who averages around 10 to get a 7.72 average.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where you would perform a 1 proportion z-test. There's a lot of work to it, but you can just plug it into your calculator. I don't want to take up too much stream time with that, but you'll get a z-score, which is essentially standard deviation. Like it measures how much the times deviate. And that was about -30, which is very, very extreme. And that means that there's a large deviation.
Okay.
And and if you use a normal distribution, then you can see that the p-value is extremely small. So you can see it's 1.94 times 10 to the negative. Yeah, that's a huge number. But this is very close to 0. So you can just approximate it with 0. And when you have these kind of tests, if you end up with a number that's really small or close to 0, typically less than 0.05, that means that you're going to reject the first claim that he averages 10.01. So that means that it's extremely likely that he averages less than 10.01, which is obviously true, seeing as he achieved a 7.72 average, right?
Right.
So now I want everyone to look at the second graph, which is a box plot.
This guy down here.
It looks like a weird box. Yeah. So this is the distribution of all of his times from 2024 to 2025. You can see in the box, there's like a line down the middle. That is his mean. So that's around 10.01. And then you'll see his lowest average was 8.85 before the 772. So you'll see there's a slight skew in a bit like to the left, which means that he's probably averaging like most of his times would probably be around like sub 10, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But like his mean was still 10.01. But yeah, basically from the first slide, what I want to take away from it is that he definitely does not average 10.01. And like if you were just looking at his results, that's what people would likely assume. Which is why I don't think people saw this coming in terms of him getting a world record. I mean, also he broke his PR average by over a second, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I would say that's why no one saw him or like foresaw him getting a sub 8 average, considering he averages around 10 in comp.
Okay, I'm with you. So while on the psych sheets he probably didn't look that hot, certainly not world record hot. You're sort of backing that up now by looking at the deviations here, and you're sort of disproving the psych sheet, I suppose, really, in essence, aren't you?
Yeah, and I would say this is kind of scary considering we don't know what Luke averages now, because you ideally want to use their times, like their overall mean of. I mean, this is over 300 solves, 76 averages. That's certainly, I would say, a fairly good sample size in terms of what he averages.
Yeah.
But he definitely just doesn't average 10, and I think this is a lot of people thought he was averaging around 10, and that's why it was uncalled for. And quickly getting back, you can see the last bullet on this slide is talking about confidence interval. So I'll talk about what a confidence interval is. So because we would say we don't really know what he averages now, considering he averages 10 in comp, but he has a 7.72 sample, right? We can kind of estimate what he would average using the standard deviation. There's a formula for this, but once again, I don't want to get into the boring stuff. But it'll give us a range of what his true average would likely be. I'm going to reject the lower half. So the true average would be for a 99% confidence interval using all of his means from all of his averages from last year would be he either averages or he averages anywhere from 6.38 to 9.07 seconds. But I want to reject the 6.38 because I think that's kind of ridiculous. So I would say he probably averages around 9.07, right? But then comes the argument of, well, this is solves from 2024 and 2025 all the way spanning from the beginning of 2024, meaning it's probably not likely that these solves are up to date or like the results are up to date, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they're not necessarily proven to be accurate. So on the second slide, we can go there now.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so on the second slide, you'll see more statistics, and this sample was all taken from his rounds in 2025. So I've included his 772 average in here, and also I've created a new confidence interval. So yeah, in his new confidence interval, we can see that we have a new box plot as well. So first off, the mean of all of his averages this year is 10.08 roughly.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's a bit slower.
Yeah,
but
that's
I think
interesting.
That also like the data sets that he or like it's less averages. So obviously any one average that's a bit more is going to weight it a bit more. So I don't think that that's necessarily fair. But we have a different standard deviation, and the standard deviation is actually a bit higher here. And so I've taken the time to calculate another confidence interval, which I think is slightly more accurate in terms of what Luke actually averages. So you can see this distribution is actually a bit more skewed than the other one. You can see like the box is like physically closer to the it's like physically closer to the left, which means that he's getting more sub 10 averages, which is fairly impressive, of course. But using the 99% confidence interval, we can say with 99% confidence that he averages somewhere from 6.77 to around 8.76. So I would say he averages around 8.67. So yeah, he would average around 8.7. I think that's a good place to put him, which is on par with a lot of our users, I think, at this point.
Right. Okay, great. So just to break that down just a little bit, what exactly was the aim of this? Was to get a more understandable average of his recent solves.
Yeah. So essentially, with the first one, you can see like the range is kind of ridiculous, starting at 6.38. There's no way that Luke averages 6.38, obviously.
Of course.
And I feel like 9.07 is a bit of an overshoot, considering he did get a 7.7 average, and he has multiple sub-9 averages in comp. But obviously, like also this spans from 2024, and I thought that maybe using more recent results would give or would provide a bit more of an accurate estimate. But also, yeah. So the idea of the Z test was to first, like, which is the first part with the variation, was to basically see, or was to basically gauge Luke's actual performance. So we know that he's definitely sub 10, which is not reflected by his competition results. But the goal of the confidence interval was to provide an estimate as to where he truly averages in OH solving.
Gotcha. Yeah, true. So I can see Gancube in the chat. They asked Luke what he globals, and he said like 9.7. But I suppose that's kind of dirty data, isn't it? Because like a global, we don't know what that means in terms of how many solves for what length of time, and all that kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so. All right, I see Levi's question, actually. I'll get to those questions in a second. So, obviously, like I said, it's extremely hard to get accurate statistics here, considering I only used official solves, and obviously Luke doesn't perform the same in comp as he does at home. And also, considering, like, that, yeah, some of these solves are pretty old, and I didn't have up-to-date data sets. I did actually ask Luke for a large OH session, but unfortunately he wasn't able to give me one. I'm assuming that he is just I'm assuming that he's just not reporting large averages, which is completely fair. So yeah, unfortunately I didn't have like any like really, really concrete data to use. But yeah, anyways, getting back to Levi's question, how can he global 8.7 when he doesn't have any official averages? Besides the 772, I actually agree with this claim, which is why I will get back to the point that it's really hard to just estimate using only official solves. But yeah, I do agree with that. It's hard to gauge whether, but it's hard to gauge really what he averages using a confidence interval in this case. But I mean, you could also just say it's probably nerves, or whatever. But yeah,
so you're kind of finding the. You're kind of finding the mathematical nerve ratio almost, kind of.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not going to pretend that I understood all of that, but I found it really interesting nonetheless. Chatter are enjoying it as well. You can kind of tell with how chat slowed down that everyone was just kind of paying attention and listening. Curious Nick there saying top tier stats. Thanks. I think we'll leave it there just now. But Anthony, thank you so much for coming on and explaining all that to us and giving us your opinion on the average and giving us the big stats. I wonder if Luke didn't give you a big bunch of session data because maybe he didn't want anyone to see how good he is at home. Because then people would just be like, why can't you put that down on a comp? So he might be looking at this now, understanding way more than we are, because you're looking at between 677 and 867. He's probably looking at that, understanding way more than what we are. Which is really interesting. All right, listen, I'm going to leave it there and crack on with some other stuff. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us today. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Do you want to plug anything? Do you want to? You've got a YouTube channel as well, don't you?
Yeah, you can go subscribe to that. I have a collab with Luke, so that'd be fun if you wanted to watch that. But yeah, otherwise, that's pretty much it. Yeah,
nice one. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I will. We'll catch you soon. Thank you very much, Anthony Zhang.